remember the exact moment I became a heretic. I was kneeling in the morning prayer circle at the textile manufactorum when I heard Justin whisper the wrong words during the litany of devotion. He said the Emperor's mercy endures forever instead of the Emperor's wrath endures forever. It was a small mistake, barely noticeable over the sound of 200 workers reciting prayers in unison. But I heard it clearly because Justin stood directly to my left. I reported him to the shift supervisor exactly 47 minutes later during our morning ration break, just as the Imperial infantryman's uplifting primer instructs all loyal citizens to do. I thought I was doing my duty. I thought the Emperor would be pleased. My name is Marin Cole. I am 42 years old. I have worked as an overseer at the Gamma Sector Textile Manufactorum for 19 years. I supervise 50 workers who operate the looms that weave the fabric for Imperial Guard uniforms. It is honest work, important work. Every uniform that keeps a soldier warm on some distant battlefield starts on one of my looms. I take pride in this. I have never missed a shift. I have never questioned an order. I pray to the Emperor every morning and every night. I thought these things mattered. 3 days after I reported Justin, I woke to the sound of my hab block door exploding inward. The chronometer on my wall read 3:17 in the morning. I barely had time to sit up in my cot before the light from the corridor blinded me. Dark shapes moved through the doorway. I heard the hiss of power armor servos and smelled the ozone scent that clings to hell guns after they have been fired recently. My first thought was that there had been a mistake. My second thought was that there are no mistakes. Stormtroopers, 6 of them. Their carapace armor was black as void space and polished to a mirror shine. Their helmets completely covered their faces. The red lenses of their visors glowed in the darkness of my hab unit like the eyes of hunting animals. None of them spoke. One grabbed my arm with a grip that felt like a power vise and hauled me out of bed. My bare feet hit the cold metal floor and I stumbled, but the stormtrooper did not let me fall. He simply dragged me forward. I tried to ask what was happening. The words caught in my throat and came out as a weak croak. No one answered. They marched me down the corridor past my neighbors who stood in their doorways watching with wide eyes and carefully blank expressions. No one would meet my gaze. I understood why. To show sympathy for someone being taken by the Inquisition was to invite suspicion upon yourself. I had looked away like that before when others were taken. Now I was the one being watched by frightened eyes that refused to help. An inquisitorial gun cutter waited on the landing platform outside my hab block. The small shuttle had no windows, no markings. Just smooth black metal that seemed to absorb the light from the overhead lumens. We called any windowless Inquisition transport a black ship, even though the real black ships were massive voidcraft that collected psychers across the galaxy. This one was just large enough to carry prisoners and their guards. The rear hatch stood open like a mouth. I could see nothing inside except darkness. The stormtroopers pushed me up the ramp and into that darkness. The hatch sealed behind us with a sound like a coffin closing. They put me in a cell. The room was 3 meters by 3 meters with walls of bare gray metal. There was no cot, no lavatory, no furniture of any kind except a drain in the center of the floor. The only light came from a single lumen strip in the ceiling that buzzed constantly with a sound that made my teeth ache. The door was solid metal with no window or slot for food. When it closed, I was alone with the buzzing light and my own breathing. I tried to keep track of time by counting the beats of my heart. I counted to 1,000. Then I counted to 1,000 again. Then I lost track and had to start over. I tried to pray, but the words felt wrong in my mouth. I tried to remember what I had done to deserve this, but I could only think of Justin and his misquoted prayer. Surely that was not enough. Surely reporting a heretic could not be a crime. The light stayed on. I could not tell if it was day or night. I grew thirsty, then hungry, then so thirsty that hunger did not matter anymore. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. My lips cracked and bled. I licked the blood because it was wet. I thought about the drain in the floor and wondered if I could drink from it, but there was no water. Just the smell of chemicals and rust. I do not know how long I waited in that cell. It might have been 2 days, it might have been 5. Time stopped meaning anything. There was only the buzzing light and the thirst and the growing certainty that I had been forgotten, that I would die in this room and no one would ever know what happened to Maren Cole from Gamma Sector. Then the door opened. A woman stood in the corridor beyond. She was old, perhaps 70, with white hair pulled back into a tight bun. Her robes were black and red with the symbol of the Inquisition embroidered in gold on her chest. The 3-barred eye flanked by stylized alien skulls. The mark of the Ordo Xenos, the branch that hunted threats from beyond humanity. Her eyes were wrong. The left one was human, pale blue and tired. The right one was an augment, a lens of brass and crystal that whirred softly as it focused on me. I could see tiny gears turning inside it. She studied me for a long moment. The augment eye clicked and adjusted. I realized it was recording everything, every expression on my face, every breath I took, every bead of sweat that rolled down my forehead. All of it being saved in data banks for later analysis. "Maren Cole," she said. Her voice was soft and pleasant, like a teacher addressing a student. Designation 83 Gamma 4471, age 42, occupation textile manufacturer, overseer, no family, no spouse, no children, no close friends. You live alone in Hab Unit 7 on 992 and you have done so for 11 years since your mother died. Is this correct? I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. I managed a nod. You will answer verbally, she said in that same pleasant voice. Yes? I croaked. Good. I am Inquisitor Vosk. You will address me as my lady or as Inquisitor. Do you understand? Yes, my lady. She stepped into the cell. 2 stormtroopers followed her but remained by the door. She circled me slowly like a buyer examining livestock at market. The augment eye whirred constantly as it recorded. Tell me about your childhood, she said. The question confused me. I had expected her to ask about Jestin, about why I reported him, about whether I had heard any other heresies spoken in the manufactorum. Instead, she wanted to know about my childhood. I grew up in the lower hive, I said slowly. Sector Delta. My father worked in the Prometheum refineries. He died when I was 12, an explosion. My mother raised me alone after that. She worked in the food processing plants. I started working when I was 10, sorting grain. Then I moved to the looms when I was 16. Did your mother teach you to pray? Yes, my lady. Did she ever speak against the Emperor? Never, my lady. Did she ever complain about her work? About the conditions in the lower hive? About the suffering of the poor? I hesitated. Everyone complained about work. Everyone complained about conditions. It was what people did during the brief rest periods, but I sensed danger in the question. No more than anyone else, my lady, I said carefully. So she did complain. Only in the normal way, my lady. The way all workers talk, nothing serious, nothing that questioned the Emperor's wisdom. Inquisitor Voska nodded as if I had confirmed something she already knew. She asked more questions. What prayers did my mother teach me? What did I dream about at night? What was my favorite food? Did I have friends at the manufactorum? Had I ever felt attracted to any of my co-workers? The questions seemed random and pointless, but I answered them all as truthfully as I could. After what felt like hours, she stopped asking questions. She looked at me with her human eye while her augment eye continued recording. You reported a heretic 3 days ago, she said. Relief flooded through me. Finally, we were getting to the truth. Finally, I could explain that I had done my duty. Yes, my lady, Jestin Varro, he misquoted the litany of devotion during morning prayers. I reported him immediately to my supervisor as the primer instructs. You did the correct thing, she said. Thank you, my lady. It condemns you completely. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, not understanding. She smiled slightly as if my confusion pleased her. "We will speak again soon," she said, and left the cell. The door closed behind her and I was alone again with the buzzing light. 2 hours later, guards entered my cell. They did not speak. They grabbed my arms and stripped off my clothes. All of them. They left me standing naked in the center of the room while one of them produced an electric razor. They shaved my head. The hair fell around my feet in clumps of brown and gray. Then they sprayed me with chemical delousing agent from a pressure hose. The liquid burned my skin like acid. I screamed and tried to cover my face, but they held my arms. The spray got in my eyes and mouth. It tasted like poison and industrial cleanser and something else I could not identify. When they finished, they threw a gray shift at me, rough fabric that scratched against my burned skin. No undergarments, no shoes, just the shift. Then they left and I was alone again. I collapsed on the floor and curled into a ball. My skin felt like it was still burning. My scalp stung where the razor had nicked me. I could taste the chemicals in my mouth and smell them in my nose. But worse than any of that was the understanding that had begun to dawn in my mind. The questions Inquisitor Vosk had asked were not about finding the truth. She already knew the truth. The questions were about establishing how I responded when I was not afraid, how my voice sounded when I was being honest, what my face looked like when I was not lying. She was building a baseline, a reference point against which all future responses would be measured. Because soon she would ask me questions again. And next time I would be afraid. Next time I would be in pain. Next time I might lie to make the pain stop. And she would know because she had recorded how I acted when I was telling the truth. I had done everything right. I had reported the heretic. I had been a loyal citizen my entire life. I had never questioned, never doubted, never strayed from the path the Emperor set before me, and none of it mattered. I was in the hands of the Inquisition now, and the Inquisition did not make mistakes. If they had taken me, then I must be guilty of something. They would find that guilt. They would dig it out of me piece by piece if necessary. And if there was no guilt to find, they would create it. I lay on the cold metal floor and stared at the buzzing light and understood that Maren Cole, textile manufacturum overseer from Gamma Sector, was already dead. What happened next would just be the process of making that death official. They came for me 6 hours after the delousing. I had not slept. The buzzing light made sleep impossible. When the door opened, I actually felt relief. Anything was better than being alone with my thoughts in that cell. The guards took me to a different room. This one was larger, maybe 6 meters by 6 meters, with a high ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. Chains hung from a beam in the center of the room. The chains ended in metal cuffs worn smooth by use. Dark stains marked the floor beneath them. I did not want to think about what had made those stains. The guards lifted my arms above my head and locked the cuffs around my wrists. The metal was cold against my skin. They adjusted the chains using a winch mounted on the wall. The chains pulled tight. My arms stretched upward until I was standing on my toes. Then they raised me higher. My feet left the floor completely. All my weight hung from my wrists. The pain started immediately. Not terrible at first, just uncomfortable. My shoulders strained against the pull of gravity. My wrists burned where the cuffs bit into flesh. I could handle it. I told myself I could handle it. The guards left without saying a word. The door closed. I hung alone in the silence. The first hour was bearable. The pain in my shoulders grew steadily worse, but I could still think clearly. I tried to find a position that hurt less. I twisted. I turned. I tried to pull myself up to ease the weight on my wrists. Nothing helped. Every movement made it worse. The second hour was when I began to understand what was happening. This was not a quick torture. This was not about immediate pain. This was about time, about waiting, about feeling my own body slowly destroy itself under its own weight. My shoulders felt like they were being pulled from their sockets. The muscles in my arms and back screamed for relief that would not come. My hands went numb as the cuffs cut off circulation. I could not feel my fingers anymore. I looked up at them and saw they had turned purple. The third hour was when I started begging. No one was there to hear me, but I begged anyway. I promised to confess to anything they wanted. I promised to give them names. I promised complete cooperation. My voice echoed off the stone walls and came back to me sounding small and broken. The fourth hour was when my bladder let go. The warm liquid ran down my legs and pooled on the floor beneath me. The shame of it was worse than the pain. I was 42 years old and I had wet myself like a child. I hung there in my own waste and felt what remained of my dignity drain away with it. The fifth hour was when something in my left shoulder gave way. I felt it pop, not a sound so much as a sensation, like a joint sliding out of alignment. A new dimension of agony opened up inside me. I screamed. The sound that came out of my throat did not sound human. The guards came back after the sixth hour. They lowered me to the floor. My legs would not support my weight. I collapsed. They dragged me back to my cell and threw me on the floor. The door closed and I lay there unable to move. My arms would not respond to commands. They hung useless at my sides. My left shoulder had swollen to twice its normal size. I do not know how long I lay there. Time had stopped meaning anything. The pain was everything. It filled the universe. There was nothing else. The door opened again. A man entered. He was old with a kind face and gentle eyes. He wore the black robes of the Inquisition, but his bearing was different from Inquisitor Voska. He knelt beside me and produced a canteen of water. "Drink," he said softly. I drank. The water tasted like salvation. He helped me sit up. He examined my shoulder with practiced hands. His touch was gentle. "Dislocated," he said. "I can fix it, but it will hurt." I nodded. What was more pain on top of everything else? He gripped my arm and pulled. The joint slid back into place with a wet grinding sound. I screamed again, but the relief that followed was immediate. The terrible pressure eased. The pain dropped from unbearable to merely awful. "My name is Interrogator Drome," he said. "I am here to help you." I wanted to believe him. His voice was warm. His manner was kind. He offered me more water, and I drank gratefully. "Tell me why you reported Justin Varro," he said. "He spoke heresy during prayers," I said. "He misquoted the litany of devotion. I did my duty as the primer instructs." Drome nodded slowly. He stood and walked to the door. He spoke to someone outside. A moment later, guards brought in a chair. He sat in it and looked at me with those kind eyes. "Let us pray together," he said. He began reciting the litany of devotion. His voice was strong and clear. I joined him, speaking the words I had known since childhood. The familiar rhythm was comforting, a reminder that there were still solid truths in a world that had become unstable and terrifying. Then he changed a word. Just one word. He said the Emperor's love is eternal instead of the Emperor's judgment is eternal. I stopped speaking. I stared at him. He continued the prayer with the wrong words as if nothing was strange. "Why did you stop?" he asked when the prayer was finished. "You said it wrong," I said carefully. "Did I? How should I have said it?" I repeated the correct version. "Are you certain?" he asked. "Yes. I have said that prayer every day of my life." "So you are correcting an interrogator of the Holy Inquisition. You are claiming to know the Emperor's words better than I do." The trap closed around me. I felt it like a physical thing. If I insisted I was right, then I was guilty of pride and arrogance. If I backed down and accepted his version, then I was accepting heresy. "I only meant—" I started, but he held up a hand. "It is fine," he said gently. "I was testing you. You were correct to notice the error. That shows devotion." Relief washed through me. Then I realized this was just another test. He was being kind so that next time he was cruel it would hurt more. He was offering hope so that despair would cut deeper. "Tell me about Justin Varro," he said. "He worked at my manufactorum. He operated Loom 47. He was a quiet man, kept to himself, did his work without complaint. Did you like him?" "I did not know him well enough to like or dislike him." "But you watched him closely enough to hear his prayer over the sound of 200 other workers." "I was standing next to him." "Why were you standing next to him?" "The prayer circle forms naturally. Workers stand where they stand. There is no assigned order." "So it was chance that you were beside him?" "Yes. Or perhaps you positioned yourself beside him deliberately. Perhaps you had been watching him for some time. Perhaps you suspected him already and wanted to catch him in an error." "No, it was not like that." "Then how was it?" I tried to explain, but the words came out wrong. Everything I said sounded like a lie, even though it was true. Drome listened with that kind expression, and I knew he was documenting every contradiction, every hesitation, every sign that I was hiding something. The questioning went on for hours. He asked the same things over and over in different ways. He pointed out inconsistencies in my answers. He suggested motivations I had never had. By the end, I was not sure anymore what had really happened. Maybe I had been watching Justin. Maybe I had positioned myself beside him deliberately. Memory became unreliable under the pressure of his gentle probing. He left eventually. The guards came and took me back to the hanging room. They strung me up again. This time they left me hanging for 8 hours. My shoulders dislocated again, both of them this time. The pain was beyond description, beyond thought. I existed in a universe made entirely of suffering. When they finally lowered me, I could not stand. I could not speak. I lay on the floor and shook. My body had betrayed me completely. I had no control over it anymore. Through the walls of my cell, I began to hear other sounds, screams from nearby rooms. Someone was crying. Someone else was reciting prayers over and over in a voice that cracked and broke. A young woman was begging, "Please, no, please, I have children, please." The woman's voice haunted me. I pressed my ear against the wall, trying to hear more. She kept mentioning her children, 2 of them, a boy and a girl. She kept saying she needed to get back to them, that they were only 8 and 6 years old, that they needed their mother. Her screaming went on for a long time, then it stopped suddenly. The silence that followed was worse than the screaming had been. Another voice began reciting the Catechism of Suffering. The words were correct at first. Then they became slurred. Then they turned into wordless groaning. Then silence. I realized I was hearing people die, or worse. I was hearing people being broken so completely that death would be a mercy they would not receive. Drome came back. He brought water and food. Corpse starch ration bars that tasted like cardboard, but I ate them anyway. He reset my shoulders again. The pain was incredible but brief. "You are doing well," he said, "better than most." "Please," I said, "please just tell me what you want me to confess." "I want the truth." "I have told you the truth. Have you? Let us try again." He began the questioning again. This time he suggested that I was part of a cult, that Justin was my contact, that I reported him because he was going to expose me, that my entire life had been a cover for heretical activities. I denied it. I denied everything. But he kept suggesting and implying and connecting dots that did not exist until I began to doubt my own memories. Had I been part of a cult? Could I have forgotten? Could there be parts of my life I did not remember? The guards came again. This time they took me to a different room, a medici chamber. They strapped me to a table. A tech priest entered with a case full of syringes. "This will help you remember the truth," Drome said. The tech priest injected something into my arm. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The room began to stretch and twist. Colors became sounds. Sounds became physical sensations. Time stopped moving in a straight line. 1 second lasted forever. An hour passed in an instant. The questioning continued, but I experienced it in pieces, fragments of dialogue separated by eternities of distorted perception. Drome asked about my childhood. I answered, but the words came out wrong. I was speaking backwards, or maybe I was speaking forwards and time was moving backwards. I could not tell. He asked if I worshipped the dark gods. I said no. But in my altered state, no sounded like yes. Or maybe I said yes and heard no. The drug made lies and truth interchangeable. He asked if I had ever spoken with demons. I saw demons in the room. They crawled on the walls with too many legs. They whispered names that burned to hear. I screamed and the demons laughed with Drome's voice. He asked if I had corrupted other workers at the manufactorum. I saw faces, dozens of them, hundreds, all the people I had ever known. They were all corrupted. Their skin peeled back to reveal clockwork mechanisms beneath. They were not human. They had never been human. How had I not seen it before? The drug session lasted 6 hours, or 6 days, or 6 minutes. Time had no meaning. When it ended, I was back in my cell, but I could not remember how I got there. The walls breathed. The floor moved like water. My hands looked wrong. Too many fingers, not enough fingers. Were those my hands? Eventually, the drug wore off. Reality solidified around me again. But I had confessed. I remembered confessing. I had admitted to worshiping chaos, to speaking with demons, to corrupting other workers, to planning to overthrow the Imperium. None of it was true, but I had said it all. I had signed documents too. I remembered a pen in my hand, my signature on paper, legal documents that made my confession official. I waited for execution. I prayed for it. Death would be a release from this nightmare, but execution did not come. Instead, Drome returned. He sat in his chair and looked at me with those kind eyes. "We know you are innocent," he said. The words made no sense. I stared at him. "We have always known you were innocent," he continued. "You are not a heretic. You are not corrupt. You reported Jestin Vero because it was your duty. You have been a loyal citizen your entire life." "Then why?" My voice barely worked. "Because we needed someone," he said simply. "There is a Genestealer cult operating in your sector. We have been tracking them for months. We need someone to infiltrate them, someone broken enough to be rebuilt, someone desperate enough to do whatever we command, someone whose spirit has been crushed so thoroughly that we can reshape it into whatever we need." He stood and walked to the door. He paused before leaving. "You were selected because you are strong," he said. "Weaker minds shatter completely under interrogation. They become useless. But you survived. That proves you have value. Tomorrow your real training begins." The door closed. I sat in the darkness and understood the full scope of what had been done to me. I had not been questioned. I had been tested. Every torture had been a measurement. Every confession had been a data point. They had been breaking me systematically to see how much pressure I could withstand before I broke completely. And I had passed their test, which meant something far worse than death was coming. The transformation began the next morning. Guards came to my cell and took me to a room I had not seen before. It was clinical and white with bright lights that hurt my eyes after so long in darkness. Medical equipment lined the walls. Machines that beeped and hummed with purposes I could not guess. In the center stood a chair similar to the ones I had been strapped to before, but this one had more cables and tubes connected to it. More sensors. More needles. Inquisitor Voska waited for me there. Her augment eye whirred as I entered. She gestured to the chair and I sat without being told. I had learned that resistance only made things worse. The guards strapped me down. My wrists, my ankles, my chest, my head. I could not move at all. "You have been chosen for a great purpose," Voski said. Her voice was still pleasant and calm like a teacher explaining a lesson. "The Emperor needs you. The Imperium needs you. What happens next will be difficult, but it is necessary. Do you understand?" "Yes, my lady," I said, because that was the only answer she would accept. She nodded to the tech priest who stood beside the chair. He began attaching sensors to my head. Small metal discs that stuck to my scalp with cold gel, each one connected to a cable that ran to the machines. I counted 12 sensors before I lost track. "We are going to help you become who you need to be," Vosky said. "The person you were before is not sufficient for the task ahead. That person was weak, uncertain, burdened by memories that serve no purpose. We will remove those burdens. We will make you stronger, better, more useful." The tech priest injected something into my arm, different from the drug they had used before. This one did not distort reality. Instead, it made everything sharp and clear and painfully bright, every sensation amplified, every thought crystal clear. I was more awake than I had ever been in my life. The machines activated. I felt electricity flowing through the sensors into my brain. Not painful exactly, but deeply wrong. Like fingers reaching inside my skull and touching things that should never be touched. The room disappeared. I was somewhere else, inside my own mind. Images flashed before me faster than I could process. Pictures of Xenos creatures. Genestealers with their 4 arms and purple skin and the ridge of bone that ran along their skulls. Each image came paired with a jolt of electricity, pain, fear. My body responded without my control. My heart raced, my breathing quickened, sweat poured down my face, again and again. Genestealer images paired with electric shocks, Genestealer faces paired with waves of nausea, Genestealer claws paired with the sensation of fire burning through my veins. My brain began to make connections. Xenos equals danger, Xenos equals pain, Xenos equals threat that must be destroyed. Then different images, the Imperial Aquila, the 2-headed eagle symbol. Each image paired with pleasant sensations. Warmth flowing through my body, chemicals that made me feel safe and content. My breathing slowed, my muscles relaxed. The eagle symbol became associated with relief and comfort and rightness. They cycled through thousands of images, chaos symbols paired with terror, imperial saints paired with joy, heretical texts paired with disgust, prayer books paired with peace. My nervous system was being rewired, trained like an animal, Pavlov's dog but with a human mind. Stimulus and response, punishment and reward. Over and over until the responses became automatic, unconscious, part of my fundamental programming. The session lasted 8 hours. When it ended, I was exhausted in ways I had never experienced. Not physically tired, but mentally drained, as if my brain had been running at full speed for so long that it had overheated and needed to shut down. They took me back to my cell. I slept for what felt like days. When I woke, they brought me food and water and then took me back to the White Room, the chair, the sensors, the electricity, the images, again and again, day after day. I lost count of how many sessions there were. 10, 20, more? My responses became faster each time. I saw a picture of a Genestealer and my body reacted instantly with fear and rage before my conscious mind could even register what I was seeing. I saw the Aquila and felt a rush of devotion so powerful it brought tears to my eyes. The conditioning was working exactly as they intended. But the image training was only the first part. The second part was worse, much worse. They began showing me pictures of people, random citizens, workers, children, elderly, rich, poor. The images came with questions. Is this person loyal? Is this person corrupt? Is this person hiding something? There was no way to know the answers. The pictures were just ordinary people doing ordinary things. But if I hesitated too long, an electric shock came. If I answered incorrectly, a shock came. I learned to look for tiny details. A slight wrongness in how someone stood. An expression that seemed too controlled. A look in the eyes that suggested fear or guilt or suspicion of being watched. I learned to see threat everywhere because that was what kept the shocks away. They showed me a picture of a woman holding a child. Is she loyal? I studied her face, the way her smile did not quite reach her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the way she held the child too tight. Something was wrong. I could feel it. "No," I said. "She is hiding something." No shock came. I had answered correctly. But what was I seeing? What invisible signs had I learned to read? I did not know anymore. More pictures, more questions. An old man at prayer. Is he loyal? No. His lips are moving wrong. He is reciting heretical verses, a young couple walking together. Are they loyal? No. They stand too close, too familiar. They are cult members using intimacy as a cover. A child playing with a toy. Is he loyal? I hesitated. He was just a child. But the machine waited. The threat of shock hung in the air. I looked closer. The toy was carved wrong. The proportions were off. It depicted something that should not exist. "No," I said. "The child is corrupted." No shock came. I was learning to see heresy in everything, in everyone. My mind was being trained to find guilt where none existed because the Inquisition needed tools that could identify threats even when there was no evidence. Tools that operated on instinct and suspicion, tools that never gave the benefit of doubt. The third part of the conditioning was memory modification. This was the part that frightened me most, not because of the pain, but because of what it would take from me. They started showing me images of people I did not know. A young girl, maybe 16 years old, with brown hair and green eyes. Her name is Kessa. She is your sister. I do not have a sister, I said. The shock came, stronger than before. Again the image. Her name is Kessa. She is your sister. I am an only child. Shock. Again. Kessa, sister, your sister. They showed me the image hundreds of times, thousands of times, each time paired with the statement, your sister Kessa, each time punishing denial, each time rewarding acceptance. They showed me false memories, Kessa playing in the lower hive corridors, Kessa learning to pray beside our mother, Kessa working in the textile manufactorum before she was transferred to another sector. My brain fought against it. I knew it was not real. I knew I had never had a sister. But the constant repetition wore down my certainty. The images became familiar. I started remembering things that had never happened. Kessa's laugh, the way she used to braid her hair, the time she scraped her knee and I carried her home. Then they showed me new images. Kessa lying dead, her body torn apart by Xeno's claws, Genestealer cultists standing over her corpse. The rage that filled me was real even though the memory was false. The grief was genuine even though it was manufactured. They had created a traumatic memory and planted it in my mind. Given me a reason to hate that felt authentic because my brain could no longer tell the difference between what had happened and what I had been made to believe. I tried to hold on to my real memories. I tried to remember my actual childhood, my mother's face, but the features would not come into focus. Was her hair brown or black? Were her eyes blue or gray? I could not remember. The false memories were pushing out the real ones, taking up space in my mind, replacing truth with carefully constructed lies. They showed me pictures of my hab block. What is the number? I knew this. I had lived there for 11 years, Unit 7 to 992, but was it 7 to 992 or 7 to 991 or 8 to 992? The numbers swam in my mind. I could not be certain. They showed me my manufactorum, which sector, Gamma 7, no wait, Delta 7, Gamma 9? The details that had once been solid facts became uncertain, fluid, changeable. Meanwhile, the false memories grew stronger. Kessa was real. I could see her face more clearly than I could see my own mother's face. The day she died was burned into my mind with perfect clarity. I had not been there, but I could see it as if I had witnessed it. The Genestealers breaking into her hab unit, her screams, the sound of claws on metal, the smell of blood, all of it false, all of it feeling absolutely true. Drome visited me between sessions. He sat in his chair and spoke in that gentle voice. He asked about Kessa. I told him what I remembered. He nodded as if it was all real. as if I was remembering actual events rather than reciting the story they had programmed into me. "The Xenos took her from you," he said. "They murdered her. Do you want revenge?" "Yes," I said, and meant it with every part of my being. "Good. That anger will keep you focused. That rage will help you do what is necessary. When you see the cult members, remember Kessa. Remember what they took from you." He was right. The false memory gave me purpose. Gave me motivation that felt authentic even though it was based on lies. I was being turned into a weapon, and the edge of that weapon was my own manufactured trauma. Between the conditioning sessions, I heard the other prisoners again. The young woman who had children was gone. I never heard her voice again. But there were new voices, new screaming, new begging. The Inquisition's work never stopped. There were always more people being broken, always more tools being forged. I heard one man through the wall who kept insisting he was innocent. His voice was strong at first, defiant. He had done nothing wrong. He had broken no laws. He demanded to speak with his supervisor, demanded legal counsel, demanded his rights as a citizen of the Imperium. Day after day his demands continued. Then they became pleas. Then they became whimpers. Then silence. Another voice belonged to someone younger. A boy, perhaps 17 or 18. He cried for his mother. The sound tore at something inside me, some fragment of who I had been before. A person who would have felt sympathy. But that person was dying, being replaced by something harder, colder, more useful. The final stage of my training involved the other prisoners. Drome came to my cell one day with guards. They took me to a new room. This one had a window of thick glass. On the other side, I could see a man strapped to a chair. He was thin and pale, with the look of someone who had not seen daylight in months. Electrodes covered his body. "This man is a confirmed heretic," Drome said. "He has confessed to his crimes. Now he serves a final purpose. He will help train you." Drome handed me a control device, a simple box with a dial and a button. When you press the button, he will experience pain. The dial controls the intensity. Your task is simple. Make him scream. Study his reactions. Learn to read the signs of lying. Learn to distinguish between pain and truth, between fear and deception. I looked at the device in my hand, looked at the man through the glass. He stared back at me with empty eyes. He knew what was coming. He had probably been on this side of the glass before, had probably done to others what I was about to do to him. I pressed the button. The man convulsed. His mouth opened in a silent scream. The glass was thick enough that no sound reached me. I could only watch his body arch against the restraints. "Good," Drome said. "Now ask him a question, any question. Make him answer while in pain. Watch how his face changes, how his eyes move. You are learning to read people when all their defenses are down, when they are too broken to maintain lies." I asked the man his name. He tried to answer but could not form words. I released the button. He gasped for air. Drome nodded for me to continue. Over the course of hours, I tortured information from the man. His name was Torek. He had been a data analyst. He had been accused of hiding information from his supervisors. He insisted he was innocent even now after everything they had done to him. Part of me believed him. Part of me thought I could see truth in his eyes. But what did truth matter? He was already broken, already condemned. Whether he was guilty or innocent made no difference now. I practiced on 3 more prisoners over the following days. Each one taught me something. How to detect lying under stress. How to push just hard enough to get information without causing the person to shut down completely. How to be efficient with cruelty. The Inquisition had thousands of years of experience in breaking people, and they were teaching me everything they knew. By the end, I was numb to the screaming, numb to the pleading. I could hurt people without feeling anything. I could watch them break and experience only clinical interest in how they broke. Another part of who I had been was gone, replaced by this thing they were creating. The day came when Voska summoned me to her chambers. I stood before her while her augment eye recorded everything. She studied me for a long moment. "Your training is complete," she said. "You are no longer Marin Cole, textile manufactorum overseer. You are now operative Cole of the Ordo Xenos. You exist to serve the Inquisition. You exist to identify threats to the Imperium. You exist to infiltrate the enemy and destroy them from within. Do you understand your purpose?" "Yes, my lady," I said. And I meant it. The conditioning had worked perfectly. I believed in my purpose completely. I believed in Kessa even though she had never existed. I believed in the necessity of what I would do even though part of me still remembered that I had once been different. That memory was fading, though. Soon it would be gone entirely, and there would be only the tool they had made me. "You will be deployed to Manufactorum Sector Gamma 7, Voska continued. "The same sector you came from. There is a Genestealer cult operating there. You will identify the members. You will report them. You will help us burn out this infection before it spreads further. You have been given identity papers and a work assignment. As far as anyone knows, you are simply returning from medical leave. No one will suspect. No one will question. You are invisible, perfect, everything we need you to be." She dismissed me. Guards escorted me to a transport. I was leaving the black ship, returning to the world I had been taken from. But I was not the same person who had been dragged from his hab unit in the middle of the night. That person was dead. What remained was a weapon wearing his face. And I was grateful for it, grateful to serve, grateful to have purpose. The conditioning had stolen my ability to see how wrong this was, had stolen my capacity to question. I was exactly what they needed me to be. And some small part of me that still remembered who I had been was screaming in a place too deep for sound to carry. The transport dropped me at the Gamma Sector landing platform 6 days after I left the Inquisitorial gun cutter. I carried a small bag containing a change of clothes and my new identity papers. Everything else I owned had been left behind in my old hab unit. Or perhaps it had been sold, or burned. I did not know and found I did not care. Possessions meant nothing to who I was now. My new hab unit was identical to the old one. Same dimensions, same beige walls, same cot and desk and food preparation unit. The only difference was the number on the door, Unit 8 of 1103 instead of 7992. But even that old number felt uncertain in my mind now. Had it been 7992, or was I remembering wrong? The conditioning had made my past unstable, unreliable. Only the mission was real. Only the purpose mattered. I reported to the Manufactorum the next morning. The supervisor checked my papers and assigned me to overseer duties in Section 12. 50 workers operating looms for Imperial Guard uniforms. The same work I had done before. The same prayers at shift start. The same rhythms of industrial production. As if nothing had changed. As if I had simply been gone for medical treatment and now returned to normal life. But everything had changed. I was different. I saw things differently now. Every worker was a potential threat. Every conversation was potentially heretical. Every small deviation from proper behavior was evidence of corruption. The conditioning had trained me to see guilt everywhere, and I could not turn it off. Did not want to turn it off. This was what I was made for. I watched the workers with the skills the Inquisition had burned into my nervous system. The way they stood, how they held their tools, the expressions on their faces when they thought no one was looking. I cataloged every detail, stored every observation, built profiles in my mind of who might be compromised, who might be cult members, who might need to be reported. There was a woman named Sella who worked Loom 23. She was 38 years old with graying hair and tired eyes. She did her work efficiently, never complained, never caused problems. But I noticed how she sometimes paused during prayers, how her lips moved slightly out of sync with everyone else, how she glanced around as if checking whether anyone was watching. Small things, meaningless things. But the training made them seem significant, made them seem like evidence. I marked her as suspicious. Not enough to report yet, just enough to watch more closely. There was a young man named Pavel at Loom 31. He was 19 and worked with the intense focus of someone trying to prove himself. He arrived early to every shift, stayed late, volunteered for extra duties, model citizen behavior. But I saw how his eyes tracked certain other workers, how he seemed to be part of a small group that ate together during rations, how they spoke in low voices and stopped talking when others approached. Again, small things, normal things. But the conditioning made me see conspiracy, made me see threat. I marked him as suspicious too. The list grew longer each day. After 2 weeks, I identified 7 workers who displayed behavioral patterns that might indicate cult affiliation. 7 people whose small deviations from absolute normalcy had caught my attention. I prepared my report, detailed observations written in the precise format the Inquisition required. Names, descriptions, evidence, the patterns I had been trained to see. I delivered the report to a contact point the Inquisition had established, a small chapel in the lower hive that looked abandoned but was actually a dead-drop location. I placed my report in a concealed compartment behind a statue of Saint Olanius. 3 days later, I received confirmation. The Inquisition was reviewing my information. They would take action soon. I went about my duties and waited. I felt no guilt about what I had done, no uncertainty. The conditioning had removed my capacity for doubt. These people were threats, potential threats at minimum. Better to eliminate them before they could spread their corruption. Better to sacrifice 7 to save thousands. The mathematics of it were simple. The morality was clear. The Emperor protects, and I was an instrument of that protection. The stormtroopers came on a night shift. They swept through Section 12 with the same efficiency they had shown when they took me. Sella was pulled from her loom without explanation. Pavel was dragged from the rations line. 5 others whose names I had written in my report, all of them taken, all of them gone in minutes. The remaining workers watched with those same carefully blank expressions I remembered from when I had been taken. No one protested. No one asked questions. Everyone understood that to show sympathy was to invite suspicion. I watched them go and felt satisfaction. Clean, pure, uncomplicated by the emotions that would have troubled me before. I had done my duty. I had identified threats. The Inquisition would handle the rest. Whether these people were actually guilty did not matter. What mattered was that I had served my purpose. I had been the eyes that saw what others missed, the instrument that separated the possibly corrupt from the certainly loyal. Work continued. New workers replaced those who had been taken. The looms never stopped running. The Imperium needed uniforms, needed cloth, needed the products of our labor. Individual lives were meaningless compared to the vast machinery of production. We were all replaceable parts. Some parts just got replaced more suddenly than others. I continued my observations, built new profiles, identified new patterns. Within a month, I had another 7 names to report, then another 5, then another 12. Each report was reviewed. Each report led to more people being taken. I was good at this work, efficient, reliable. The conditioning had made me exactly what the Inquisition needed. But something began to change around month 4 of my deployment. Small at first, barely noticeable. I was at morning prayers when I heard the opening lines of the Litany of Devotion, the familiar words that I had known my entire life. The Emperor's wrath endures forever. The Emperor's judgment is eternal. The Emperor protects the faithful and destroys the heretic. Standard verses, proper verses, nothing wrong with them. Except I heard something else beneath them. A memory that did not fit. A woman's voice singing those same words. Not the harsh mechanical recitation of manufactorum prayers, but something softer. Gentler. A mother teaching her child. The memory came with sensory details that felt real. The smell of cooking starch, the sound of rain on metal, a warm feeling of safety that I had not experienced in months. The memory faded quickly. I pushed it aside and continued praying. But it troubled me. That woman's voice, that feeling of safety. They were things that did not fit with my current understanding of who I was. Operative Cole had no mother worth remembering, no childhood worth recalling. Only Kessa mattered. Only the sister who had been murdered by Xenos. That was the memory that should dominate. That was the trauma that defined me. But Kessa's face was starting to blur. When I tried to picture her, the details would not come into focus. Brown hair, green eyes. Those facts remained, but the actual image of her was becoming indistinct, like a photograph left too long in sunlight, fading, losing definition. I tried to reinforce the memory, concentrated on the day she died, the genestealers, the blood, the screams. But the scene played out like a recording I had watched rather than something I had experienced. The emotions were still there, the rage and grief, but they felt disconnected from the images, as if someone else's feelings had been attached to someone else's memories. The crack in my conditioning widened slowly over the following weeks. More fragments of old memories surfaced, a face I almost recognized. My mother. She had been real, I was certain of it. She had worked in the food processing plants. She had died when I was... How old? The number would not come. The details remained frustratingly out of reach, but I knew she had existed, knew she had been important to me in ways Kessa had never actually been. I realized with creeping horror what had been done to me. The memories of Kessa were false, planted, manufactured to give me motivation, to make me hate Xenos with personal passion rather than abstract duty. They had stolen my real past and replaced it with lies, made me grieve for someone who never existed while forgetting the people who had actually mattered. The understanding should have broken me, should have sent me into crisis, should have made me question everything I had done since returning to the manufactorum. But the conditioning was still strong. Even knowing the memories were false did not make the emotions less real. I still felt rage when I thought of genestealers. Still felt purpose when I identified potential threats. Still felt satisfaction when people were taken based on my reports. The horror was not that I had been lied to. The horror was that knowing I had been lied to changed nothing. I continued my work, continued watching, continued reporting, because the alternative was acknowledging that I had helped destroy innocent people for no reason, that I had become exactly the kind of monster that had destroyed me. And that acknowledgement would mean facing guilt so profound it would be unbearable. So I chose not to face it, chose to continue serving, chose to believe that even if my memories were false, my purpose was still valid. The genestealers were real even if Kessa was not. The cult existed even if my personal motivation for hunting them was manufactured. The math still worked, the sacrifice of the possibly guilty to protect the certainly innocent. It had to work, because if it did not, then everything I had endured had been meaningless. I submitted my next report with 13 names, more suspicious patterns, more potential threats. I told myself these people were different. These were actually guilty. I had seen real evidence this time, not just the paranoid pattern matching the conditioning had taught me, but genuine signs of corruption. But I had thought that about the first 7 too. And the second batch, and all the others, every time I believed I had found real heretics, every time I convinced myself this report was different, this report was justified. How many innocent people had I sent to the inquisitorial gun cutters? How many Marin Coles had been created from the raw material of my paranoia? The stormtroopers came again. 13 people taken in a single night. I watched from my position at the overseer's station, watched their faces as they were dragged away, saw the same confusion and terror I had felt, saw the moment when they realized their lives were over. that nothing they said or did would matter, that they were already condemned by forces they could not comprehend or resist. One of them was a woman named Petra. She was 41 years old. She had worked at the manufactorum for 23 years. She had been my friend, or as close to a friend as I allowed anyone to get. We had shared rations sometimes, talked about small things during breaks. She had asked about my medical leave when I returned, had seemed genuinely glad to see me back. I had reported her because she asked too many questions, because she seemed too interested in where I had been, because the conditioning made concern look like suspicion and friendship look like manipulation. As the stormtroopers took her, she looked directly at me. Our eyes met. And in that moment I saw recognition, understanding. She knew. She knew I had betrayed her. The look on her face was not anger, not hatred, just profound sadness, as if she pitied me, as if she understood that I was more broken than she would ever be, that whatever happened to her in the inquisitorial facilities, at least she would know she had been innocent. But I would have to live knowing I was guilty, knowing I had become exactly what the Inquisition needed me to be, a weapon that turned on its own people, a citizen who destroyed other citizens to prove his loyalty. She was gone in seconds, dragged into the transport, the door closed. I never saw her again, but that look remained, burned into my memory with the same intensity as my false memories of Kessa. Except this one was real. This one I deserved to remember. I continued my work because I had no choice, because the conditioning still functioned, because stopping would mean admitting what I had become. I identified more threats, submitted more reports, watched more people taken. The cycle never ended, could never end. The Inquisition always needed more information, always needed more names, always needed more sacrifices to feed the machine that kept humanity safe. Month 6 brought a new development. The Inquisition summoned me to a meeting, a different contact point this time, an actual chapel with real worshippers. I met Interrogator Drome in a small side chamber. He looked exactly as I remembered, kind eyes, gentle smile, the same man who had overseen my breaking and reconstruction. "You have done excellent work," he said. "Your reports have helped us identify and eliminate a significant Genestealer cult presence in this sector. 43 confirmed cultists removed. Dozens more suspects under investigation. You have saved countless lives." "Thank you," I said automatically. "We have a new assignment for you. Another manufactorum, Sector Delta 3. Intelligence suggests cult activity there as well. You will transfer next month. Same role, same work. You are too valuable to remain in one location." I understood what he was not saying. I would spend the rest of my life doing this, moving from sector to sector, manufactorum to manufactorum, identifying threats, reporting names, watching people taken. Never staying long enough to see the consequences, never building real connections, never having a life beyond the mission. I was a tool now. Tools did not get to choose their purpose, did not get to retire. They were used until they broke or wore out or were no longer needed. "I serve the Emperor," I said, because that was what I was supposed to say. "Yes, you do," Drome replied. "More faithfully than you know." He dismissed me. I left the chapel and returned to my hab unit. I sat on my cot in the darkness and tried to remember my mother's face. The real one, not false memories, not manufactured trauma. Just the simple truth of who I had been before the Inquisition made me into something else. But I could not find it, could not reach that far back into my own past. The conditioning had taken too much, left too little of the original person. Marin Cole was gone. What remained was Operative Cole, a weapon wearing a human face, a citizen programmed to destroy other citizens in the name of protection. I thought about Petra's face, that look of sadness and pity. I thought about all the others I had condemned, all the lives I had destroyed based on suspicious patterns and paranoid observations. How many had actually been cultists? How many had been innocent? I would never know. The Inquisition did not share that information with its tools. The torture had never ended. I understood that now. It had only changed form. They had not just broken me in that inquisitorial gun cutter. They had turned my breaking into a weapon, turned my trauma into motivation, turned my paranoia into operational procedure. Every person I reported was another act of self-torture, another reminder of what had been done to me, another repetition of my own destruction visited upon someone else. And the worst part was that I would continue, would keep reporting, keep identifying threats, keep feeding names to the Inquisition's endless appetite for suspects. Because the conditioning still worked. Because stopping would mean facing the full weight of what I had become. Because somewhere deep in the machine that used to be my mind, I still believed this was necessary. That humanity's survival required this level of cruelty, this depth of betrayal, this willingness to sacrifice the possibly innocent to protect against the potentially guilty. The Emperor protects. That was what we told ourselves, what we told each other, what we used to justify everything. But who protects us from the Emperor's protection? Who saves us from salvation? Who rescues us from rescue? There were no answers to those questions, only service, only duty, only the grinding machinery of the Imperium consuming everyone it touched. I lay down on my cot and closed my eyes. Tomorrow I would return to the manufactorum, would watch my workers, would look for suspicious patterns, would build new profiles, would eventually submit new reports, would watch new stormtroopers take new people to new inquisitorial facilities where they would be broken just as I had been broken. The cycle would continue, forever, because this was what the Inquisition had made me. This was what I was now. A torturer who had been tortured, a victim who created victims, a broken thing that broke others. And somewhere in the darkness behind my eyes, in a place too deep for the conditioning to reach, the person I had been before was still screaming, still begging for it to stop, still hoping that someone somewhere would show the mercy that the Imperium had long ago decided it could not afford. But no mercy would come. No rescue would arrive. There was only the work, only the mission, only the endless cycle of suspicion and betrayal and sacrifice. This was my sacred service. This was my purpose. This was what it meant to serve the Emperor in the 41st Millennium. And I would serve faithfully until I died or went mad or they found someone better to replace me. Because I had no choice. Because the conditioning had stolen my ability to choose. Because the torture had never ended. It had simply learned to wear my face.